So
Hmm.
verse number 30 then reads, perform no evil, even for the sake of Brahmins, bhikshus, gods, or honored guests, your father, mother, queen, or for your court. The ripened fruit in health for you alone. So this is what it's saying, right? You alone will bear the results of your own non-virtuous actions.
Tanda tes kodo debundwa cheji ladu jabo choronki mise choronki mimo yinki tonze tende yena teso ki tendo la diba zoya ye mari choronki mise yinki gelon yena teso saya do tunya yebe ki chido diba zoya ye mari hla ki chido diba zoya ye mari segeda hla chido diba zoya ye mari sedu kar segsedu ngazo hla la chebambu chido la senji saile tende zoiro manche seyachi tende zoya ye maris ndembo lana soso kunde guest teso ke tone eni kalo zubu tende tong shaga do nyaga mombo kun sha se nya se tende shena diba de chorong ko gugres eni chorong ge yado yong pado ma eni chorong ge tatsumo cheme gi chid teni chorong ge ko bon mesi teso gled chid papa zo shene diba mige wa zoya ye maridas junsen karsena diba mige wa zon na soni hiwi kasula nyawi ge nondur chorun role nyawi ge donga teso nyonguru mato ani mi gimba teso ke kalandabo tende lembandabo tende kanyo ye maridas te ye masiba jiredas shezon tende gimba indu ene chorun diba mazo wa kitakishe diba zoya tela nyinka imbaji hako guru das le ta advice te bari.
This verse is quite straightforward, actually. It simply states that one shouldn't do anything evil, anything non-virtuous for Brahmins or for monks. Like in order to feed them, you might do something non-virtuous in order to get good food. Um, and in the same way, then for gods, so certain religions or certain areas, maybe there are practices that involve killing animals to make what's called red offerings to the gods. So this is not something that one should do. Honored guests. This then refers to if you invite a lot of people over and you prepare a nice banquet, a nice feast, and then you kill a lot of fish or animals to have nice meat for your guests, then you're the one who are going to experience the negative results from that and not anyone else. And so then similarly, not for your father, not for your mother, not for your queen, your wife, or for your court, so your retinue, your followers. The result of any negativity that you do, even if you do it on behalf of someone else or for someone else's sake, the ripened fruit is going to be yours alone to experience. The experience of suffering in the lower realms, in the hell realms, is going to be your experience. It's impossible for anyone else to experience that.
Sheza namba soji bilula le jundre le luwa ye mari sedu ta ludu ke peja yindo teso la ye yerwa le ni sala mimi dola mimi sembi pumbo baki la migire sedu le zo sayu shula gewi le yinanda dibi le yinanda diki nomi te chorong ge pumbo ge ting tu chipo le nyongire mato sadon do teso ge ting tu nyonya ye mari ani chorong ge me khimba teso le gosha jene te ye mari shezan zaza chi gugure se ke yerwa.
In Buddhism, karma, cause and effects, is unfailing. It's not something that deceives you. So after committing an action, the ripening, the result of that will come to your own aggregates and not to earth or to stones or to other people. It cannot be exchanged or traded in any way. Lazo.
Tene, tende yindu te lodu ke la sonwa, gongzo leji nansu da maji se sungruwa. Shidong nga zo, tan jiten ke ka su yinanda, gemba nonlo ke ka su yinanda, nyeba zoya, shanze zoya, mimong ki lega leya te so, zoya nyigi mare se lodu ki sumbare, melam jabare. Tende zonkhin ki masha ba khos, kasana tende zonki chao suwa ina diba mubo zogi tugiris. Diba teso soso ki nyongiri mado miginda ki nyonya ye maris. Shizan, ta tende ki keje xie 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 ne, ane ta lodo ki jabu la diba mazo no naas tende keje xie sadu, tende tsije sunju pa teki, ane diba xie ne loson loson nomi te nyongi mundu was, nomi te kali kali shile nyongi ndo was, tende kande inas tewa ndabuji le rwa, tewa tiki lendo la, ane ludu ke tije sunju pati, dibi le no, sheba ngayo ne, tehi me la tsengi meche chong, chiwe tulamba na diba yi, lendrebu, konglo ngenpa njuru sene, ane ye yere ta.
So, once again, this verse that we just discussed basically boils down to how don't take on these kinds of roles where you will be forced to do something non-virtuous, because the result will be yours, even if it's for a group of people or for someone else's sake, right? Now, in this context, one can note that the result of one's actions is not something that is experienced immediately. It takes some time for it to manifest and to mature, so to speak. So the reason for this comes in this next verse, which I'll put in the chat here. So it reads, although performing wrong and evil deeds does not at once, like swords, create a gash, when death arrives, those evil acts will show. Their karmic fruit will clearly be revealed. That's what it says.
Shezonta roa, shedon ngaron so le te la sun yeres, tongchi nyonju kule, shene nyonju kule, lendo yin la nyonju le sidu, tongchi nyonju sena, le te tanda shele ndebu tanda ndabu, ta tsindila ndebu nyonkin chi yeres, shene nyonju sedu le te tanda shene, ene shewa shima la ndebu nyonkin tende gile chi yeres, lendo yin la nyonju le sidu, shewa ngake ki jisu la, ene le ti ndebu nyonju gile tende yeres, shezan le tende mombu ji yere, tende yinba yinsang, ene le mige wanda wuji zo chana loson, tsencha ke laba ma zowa noshin, loson le mige wik dibate ngaron sola migi mares, ti parul tez gap nda wuji gaosung res, shezan gap nda wuji gaosungwa yindu, ene ngaron soge diba mombo zo go yeres, ngaron soge diba loson zone loson devu le ya jina, pena ten nembuji laba njona loson ma zowa noshin, le mige wa jizo ne loson debu donga ji nyong na, ene nga zoge le te zogi marwa, shezan le ki kesong dabu de kare le re la na, te ze teni paru le tu ze gebu ya wa te le ki kesong dabu ji long she ne, ene ti ki gone de nga zoge diba mige wa mombo ki zoga ba te, chao yeres, Tini tuze ji le yundu, le sumbu kare gi le jizo yana yung, tin devu te ta migi yewa, tochewa tindere le west doya ye maris.
So here in general, there are three kinds of karma. A kind of very apparent, obvious karma, negative karma, where the result is experienced in this very lifetime. So that's one kind. The second is karma, negative karma, where the result is experienced after one has passed away, so in the next lifetime. And then there's karma, which only um, matures after some lifetimes have passed, so quite far in the future. And as the verse says, right, um, although performing wrong and evil deeds does not at once, like swords, create a gash. Basically, it's noting how as soon as we do something non-virtuous, as we do something bad, it's not as if we immediately get a cut on our hand or some immediate sort of negative results. If that were the case, then actually we wouldn't do any negative karma because it would be obvious to us how we are just hurting ourselves. But what ends up happening then is because the negative result is delayed, and doing something negative often carries some sort of profit for us, or that's how we feel. Then we end up doing a lot of negativities because there's some upside to doing various negative karma, right?
Ho tende res, tende yimba yindu tini, ta chiwi tula bana diba legend ebun kongla ngenjen josedu, ta sonji nga zo shigirwa, shigudu le se, seno se, tse se ne shigires, padu rumbu chingi sunrwa. Le se, tse se, seno se, tsawa ina ti mete, guru rumbu chi dende kyu ne katen doya ye mares, soje mela dende kyu le mechi shiya ye mares, ko shigires labarwa. Shezon tende ki chiwi tula bana, ane diba kare zoa ina, ane dibinde ude, ko inji meji, ba ungi res, te un tenten res, shezon ta tende yinba yindu, ane junse teso sono tongshene, ta jabu chono diba shiya ye mare daas labar.
So then it continues, when death arrives, those evil acts will show. Their karmic fruit will clearly be revealed. And Paljuni Rinpoche has a saying, which is that when the karma is up, when the span of your life is finished, when the merit has been exhausted, the merit to live on further has been exhausted, then you just have to die. That's just how it is. And it doesn't matter if you call on Guru Rinpoche or the medicine Buddha, you cannot change that fact. And the karma will have to be experienced. That's how it is.
Tapena le se, kama se me, le te se, tsa tse se me, seno se me na, yon te te se lega zoya yerwa, mijin rabu. Yon tse te se ye, seno se me na, yon te jeri tin rabu zo, sedon rabu tong. Yon te te zoya ndwa. Ta tse yon se, tsa le yon se, tsa seno yon se, tsa na, eni ta shea rong res, eni te du ta legend rebu te so migi res, eni te du ta ko don mabu chogi res, eni shirindu nyawal ndole, nyawal kaju tongi te so migi nol kagi res, teni kano shibo shigi res, teni one zoba te so hogi res, teni mine chima te so jangi res, teni ta tano shibo ji ye res, shizon te so kanga dibi kindeburi, te so lo sono ton shewa na dibi le se ya de laba ge zoya ton, lupo ge zoya de pa sho, kane ma xie ya yon 현노시 고야지도 생기노로 손노 동야야 현노시 고야지 저이레스 세선 디바조야 이 말이 라바
So it's another thing if your karma to live further is not finished, if your lifespan is not fully exhausted, and if your merit are not exhausted, but you're still about to die, then there's some wiggle room, so to speak. You can do some rituals, like some life prolonging rituals, and you might be able to live a little bit longer. But otherwise, if karma is exhausted, your lifespan has been exhausted, your merit has been exhausted, there's nothing you can do. And the results will begin to show the results of your negative actions. So it's said that at the point of death, whatever non-virtues you have will start to weigh on you. Um, you will it'll start to show, basically. Your face will become red, and you'll have some sort of signs that you'll be headed towards the lower realms. You'll feel a strong sense of fear and regret, and you might even have some sort of vision or some sort of premonition of the suffering that you're about to experience in the lower realms. So therefore, he says to the king, you shouldn't do any non-virtue.
칸에 라야 라요 히나 차부 생기 소야 라요 히나 차부 zubu ngisu sena yo hina tsabu yeba tende resele eni dibi mila kano manto was lagirwa
La, tis gozomaso.
diba gi mila kano manto wa lagira
Kana.
rongin ki kano manto wa so cheba de rongin ki kano manto wa ro kano manto wa ladu kane ma diba gi keje hiete yo heno chimbo yeris diba
Dikta
zogu
ko.
gudu sane sono yate yo heno chimbo yeris
Ah,
ani
laso.
diba de ngisu zubu gu shene na tele heno cheaji yeris Tadrinda bularo nonju.
Laso. So, um, non-virtue is actually something which is inherently frightening. It's a little bit scary even to think about. It's scary to talk about doing something non-virtuous. And um, furthermore, it's scary to actually do it, to go through with it. It's terrifying. And it has a terrifying result too.
Ta deki lek korkene tande sije sonju soji bare soni bare deki kari hegindula na public northern say yeris any public northern say de kari imba ngote zogins any public northern te sosuliena any le labu tone public konzo cha to yeris soje cha to yire shonju samba cha to yire shezan teso kachi wo hiwojire Teso yeba zogugire sile da luduke jabula laja jigindua dedon tsuren tondon teba ton time ngosa hedon tiye da hera nodon loba tube sons ene soje jonen de ki sumbares teso tachi bore lani
So that was the advice about karma. And now in this next verse, Nagarjuna teaches us about the seven noble forms of wealth. And these are really important. If you have those, it is possible for you to become a noble being. What's called an Arya in Sanskrit, basically meaning a bodhisattva, a Buddha. So Nagarjuna is then teaching the king Dichisambhu about these. And the verse reads, faith and ethics, learning, bounteousness, a flawless sense of shame and decency, and wisdom are the seven riches Buddha taught. No, other common riches have no worth. So the Buddha taught about these seven kinds of riches.
그래서 노벨 파드 동보대 faith른도와 대바 devotion.
So the first one is faith, devotion.
콜라 순예로와 어 이치비 대바 동인 대바 아니 데비 대바스 순예로와 대바들라. 베나 이치비 대바세야데 아마기 뿌글이 이치바 뿌그기 아말이 이치바 노신 다 레준데도 켄초 숨볼라 이치바텔라 이치비 대바 동의 대바세야데 민대저 진기 소소 가사기 보모된 통화에나 semba tobu chawa nongxin, ene soje do shungju semba tesu ki yeten ten tongne, ene deba xie wnga semba tobu chawa de la, debi deba si ye ro, dongi deba si. Ta debi deba si ya de, shi chungju ka kao na, ene chaba ki chu de le na sangwa nongxin, ene nga ron so ki soje ki yeten tong, gendo ki yatin de so ngala thona kande ya po ndu sele rewa shia nda bo tenden da bo ta deban da mun song yeris jinon zo che yi chi bi deba de la ye yeris.
So faith then is divided into three. There are three kinds of faith that are talked about, being trusting faith, inspired faith, and yearning faith. So the first one, trusting faith, is like the trust that is felt between, let's say, a mother and her child. The mother has some sense of trust for her child, and in the same way, the child has a trust for the mother. And here, this kind of faith is basically a sense of trusting the three jewels of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. The second kind, clear faith, is likened to, the kind of joyful feeling that someone who has a crush on someone else feels when they see that person, when they see the person that they fancy, let's say, they feel very happy and uplifted. So, um, in the context of faith, then this means that when you see or hear about the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, you feel happy and inspired and uplifted. And the third kind, yearning faith, is likened to a small bird, which is very thirsty and is kind of hoping for there to be some droplets of water to fall down that it could drink to quench its thirst. And here, this kind of faith is a state of sort of wishing for the qualities of the Buddhas. And out of these three, the main one is perhaps the first kind of faith, trusting faith.
계속 다때 가서 public knowledge heritage of novel being da se ye mare kare na fave knowledge ene 추천 라긴도 추천 라야데 다들 소재 주는데 이게 까로와 추천 라나 시라 데라용 다 현주가수 순순기로와 니제 담비 추리 개와 기든지 추리 세진 된지 추리 다 거제 추리인데 순위가수라 가세 그러고 나로 쪽에 둘로 또와 노신신의 순구기를 해야지 te karse du dolo tui kasula traba nyunyu teso tombo pa meba zo ene shula traba chimbo teso meba zo ne ene dolo te tsoma zo yero te no shun shene churin sui kasula tombo sunya le labo teso sun shene ene tela kancha tele kali sunya kale kabo teso sun toa shele tende shene ene churin tima meba ji sui ki nyolin ji soso la yeba shene tende ki churin ji yena ene te public knowledge is lavar.
To sum Nieba dombe sulchim tang tene
Senji tenshi bi tsuti,
laso.
gewa che denji tsuti, nyeba dambi ki tsuti de lunga ki migewa mazo wa shiya
Laso,
derwa.
laso,
Senji tenshi sena karse dii ngi bugi seya jewa.
laso.
Jimba tong ten tu teso ki jine senji ki tenshi na yung tsurin soya jewa. Gewa che den sena pashin tubu ti nyonglin shi na di go ne tsurin soya til la yir.
So then we come to so uh, this kind of faith, then it's a kind of wealth, um, or we could even say it's the heritage of the noble beings. It's a kind of wealth of the noble beings. And then we get to the second one, which is here in the verse, it says ethics, right? It's also sometimes known as discipline. And actually, the Buddha thought about this in the words of the Buddha. There is something called shila, which is the Sanskrit word for discipline. And this again has a division into three kinds. So there's the discipline of guarding against wrongdoing, the discipline of benefiting sentient beings, and the discipline of practicing virtue, such as the six paramitas, the six perfections. And we can approach this practice of keeping a certain discipline, basically taking different vows, right? Like we do washing dirty clothes. We would start with the smaller stains that are easy to clean, and then we move on to the really major stains. And as this example suggests, it's better to start with keeping the easy vows. And then once we have some familiarity with that, we go on and try to keep the really hard to keep vows. And then if we're then able to really reach a level of keeping unstained, unblemished discipline, then that is also a kind of noble wealth.
Tene tong la ya de jimbal ko yere. Dana. Ta jimba de la yung chiji jimba, sonzi yi jimba, shambi jimba, sayanda mumbo yerwa. Shizan jimba tongbi kikasu la, lendo no mi le rewa mi pa shene, tema mi pa se de gu yerwa. Shen mi pa shene. Ene jimba de nyolin shibi kasu pena, tema zongkin ki, tema zongba nonshin shene nyolin shiguris, tema vegetable zongkin. Vegetable zongkin keba deso ke, next monthly vegetable zongdu tombo ngema mason wa teso ngil zongi res. Any tissue la saba yoga teso zongi res. Ten noshin nga zo jimba le la le jimba nyole shi kaso la tombo kong chuyanda chalo welu chuyanda wo teso te shene. Any shul kali kali chalo welu chebo teso jimba tong towas le tende gone jimba nyole shi gures. Te yo jimba nyole shi kaso la nga shubo chogi re nga jinda chenpo re miki lagi re sambe sono mebi kito ne ta zo she na dine ki jimba de la ene yon nobel ki jimba chogi re sila.
And then we get to the third one, which is described in the verse as bounteousness, um, generosity, basically, dana. Here again, there are different kinds of divisions. So the generosity of giving material wealth, the generosity of giving freedom from fear, and the generosity of giving the Dharma. But most important is to note that generosity should be practiced without wishing for something good in return. So we should be like a smart vegetable salesman. Um, a vegetable salesman has a kind of a stock, right? And he would sell the oldest leftover vegetables first to sort of get rid of them. They're the least valuable, so sell those first, and then whatever has recently come in, the new fresh vegetables, you should sell those afterwards. So similarly, when you try to practice generosity, start with small things. Try to give away less valuable things to begin with. And also don't have this motivation or don't think that, oh, because I'm practicing generosity now, I'm going to be so rich, or now people are going to think that I'm such a big sponsor or something like that.
오야 다디니 예바티 티바로 티바스는 로존시야 데스 이르다 다 로존시비 가슬라 아니 소소기 단도 많이 봐 센지데서 지도 인사마다고 시구에서로 테마 미바세야 시진도와 테 강갈리 로구이르다 테마 미바스도 롱땡기 테마 미바 롱기 땡기 테마 미바
And then we have the fourth, which is learning. So studying. And once again, this should not be done for one's own sake, for one's own profit, but it should be for the sake of sentient beings that one engages in studying.
studying dama isare paje dama study
So
madum ban
specifically,
zoyanda bo studying chena ungi maro
so Dharma studies specifically. If you're studying about how to make bombs, then it might be hard to conceive of that being for others' sake, right? So the word unstained here is crucial, and it actually applies to all of the seven kinds of wealth. Essentially, it should be unstained by selfishness, not tainted by a selfish motivation.
tene ngoza khibase du ngoza khibase de sozo junsel ke ne ngoza khibase de ungurwa o nga gelon re anga nomba soje bare nge luko lega dujo shena digi mare nge chong tu nan digi mare nge zun lan nan digi mare sone tende shia ji ra tela la yer ngoza khibade nga bare ani tuba ti ye ba se de ngagi lega dujo le na ngagi lama de gomba chongi re ani ngagi lama de tuji gi mare ani ngagi pama de so yo ta sentri chagi re se anda gone lega dujo meje wa te ti ye barwa yin junse ji chene o de so re la ba ani shera la de dami to shera ko yere jezon de don je de no ba dumbo de la public no dum re se le ani soje chone de ki kanju no le sun yere 아니 근데 no dumbo teso no hemba sedo ngu diamond teso le kachia yeres sedo ngu la soba teso ke public konza compound to tugi mares tanda no dumbo teso ki public konza te to tugi re tende imba de jabu choro ha ko ashene ani no dumbo teso yeba zo gures labar
Then we have the fifth, which is so the word flawless is what I was talking about when I meant unstained, stainless. So flawless, that word should be applied to all of the different kinds of wealth. And now we get to the fifth, which is a sense of shame. And that's this sense that if you catch yourself about to do something negative, you should be able to remind yourself and feel a sense of shame over, oh, I'm a monk, I'm a Buddhist, I'm not supposed to do these kinds of bad things like lying and so forth. So from your own perspective, to have that sense of what's proper and shame over what's improper, right? Then we have decency, which is from others' perspective. Once again, then if you're about to do something bad, you can remind yourself that, oh, this would make my gurus and my teachers and my parents feel very disappointed in me. And they're probably also going to be worried about me. This is going to upset them if I do something like this. So that's a kind of shame, but thinking of others' reaction, basically. And then we come to wisdom. This is the wisdom of realizing selflessness. So then it says the Buddha taught. So the Buddha taught about these in the Kangyur, in the different sutras, right? No, other common riches have no worth. These are more important than conventional wealth like gold and jewels and money. So these are something that you have to strive for, that you have to make sure that you have, because on account of these, you can reach the level of a noble being. That's what Nagarjuna is advising the king here.
다 지제 손주 소순 바히 public nol dumboteso tobala 바제 zonkin기 any chinda munda 바제 nganzam tneji yeres te da jabo chorongi pa yugugure chinda munda 2 years teso kare kare iba ngote shi yere jabon jedon dula tawaton lelo debi topo tembaton chonton semo jowa ngesonwa toba nyamba jowa tedu pon sene ta teso pa yugures te la yer.
So then now, in order to obtain these 7 kinds of riches, these 7 noble riches, what is it that hinders us? What stands in the way of achieving these? Well, there seems to be something like 5 things that
6 things.
6 things that you have to get rid of, that you have to avoid. So Nagarjuna is saying to the king, please avoid these 6 things. So I'll write the verse here in the chat. Gambling, public spectacles and shows, and indolence, bad company, strong drink, and nightly prowls. These 6 will lead to lower realms and damage your good name. So give them up.
Shizong tate Nagajuna tso lagi shidong lawaro ngarozo kanga lagi ero ngarozo kanga ki onde yabo marwa te indu jimbo ji sedu ho tseya tas tseya majan jeya kesindondo ya teso lagi ere eni ndu la tawa sedu me mombo nzan desa me mombo nzan ne ke ji desanda wo ta football desanda wo tende la shewa ina yo dejo shidong mombo long sibares teso yugres any lelo te laziness te yugres any dibi tobo la te mas ta dibi tobo de sozo pa de yo dibi tobo chao si yire sozo ma de yo dibi tobo chao si yire me susal jene diba peyu ki lega shinki ki roba shinki ji yuna tezo kanga dibi tobo re pena nima jabo mashi dala tobo lajin sengi de tune any de lajin ki jabo mashida ki pula ta choron jabo zogre choron paba de dunga gure any choron jabo chogires any ko paba de dung tende shene any ta nesu shunwa ta te don te jabo mumbo yero shezon te pongres any chon alcoholic zoe maris ta chon tunga ina tene ngima ke de hie yero tawaji gi chon tun any ra se bumegi chala nya se handa bodende yero oda dendere any semo juye ma semo junki de kuma se yire yona sozo li cheme yeba la cheme yindo sala ndonke shushinki se yire dege any diba zo yire sendila yo ko chon tunki re sele sozo gi toba sozo gi behavior de zo meba zo yire good reputation de zo dendere shezon jima huma hindodu nyawa yedo tezo lele donga nyawa sozo gire shezon dendege negative tubo de oyale takishi gres jabula ngeso ludu sune yene jele ngaro sola laja de je sonwa yimba kogu yer
Well, um, I've been mentioning how the advice here is directed to this king, the Chizampo, that Nagajuna is giving the advice to the king, but actually it's directed to all of us as well. That's something we have to keep in mind. So here it talks about these different things to avoid. Um, one being gambling, so playing cards or playing dice or going to the casino or something is something that we should avoid. Public spectacles might refer to something like sports events, like football or something like this. Because if you go to those kinds of events, those a lot of people gather together to do something. Um, it's a basis for giving a lot of desire, basically, or a lot of excitement, a lot of negative emotions, um, and shows, right? So it's kind of the same. Um, Laziness, of course, something to get rid of. Bad company. This really refers to non-virtuous friends, people who are a bad influence on us. For example, then there's a story that I think we covered in the beginning of um, this class, where there's a king's son who meets someone who encourages him in a very negative direction, um, basically saying that if you want to be king, then you know you have to do some dirty work, basically. Um, so if we have these kinds of friends that are engaged in negative behavior, it's very easy for us to be um, influenced by this and to kind of start to behave in the same way. Um, Further, then, strong drink, alcohol is also something which leads to a lot of negativities and nightly prowl. So going out late at night to do something, and that's something. It could be stealing, basically. There could be thieves out. Um, or going out late at night is something that one might do if one is having an affair with another's spouse. So this is also not good to do. And either way, it looks kind of suspicious. So one's own good reputation will be tarnished by all of these kinds of things. And after death, these kinds of negativities that one is led into will lead to having to be born in the lower realms. So the advice then is please avoid these. Please try to give these six things up. This is the advice for the king, which is also indirectly intended for all of us as well.
And pena chon tuna chon li nipa yera ngima lojunda buji ke yerwa ngima tawa yabuji chande yesarwa and din don la bumi ji yesarwa ani tawa dile gagindwa ani bumi de ye moroyo chi chala raji te ani aron bodu ji ku jene ani tawa di tsala chimbarwa ani tawa dile larwa da yona chorongi ngagi chala nya gugure yona aron tung gugure yona rase gugure teso mazo waena nga romi shine higi yin se larwa chesan ani taba de sono tone ta mogi chala nya na nga taba logire rase na so je ndigi mare tan chon tung gona la ne ko chon tung ro chon tung ne ko raz ne ani rayon se ri pumi chala nya re ta kanga zo re la yero chesan chon de nyega chibo hira yesa ro 제 세네 정된데게 다바데소게 총 충주 때제지 장국 시바 장투난 리기 마리스 도알리 떠로와
Um, and then there's also the point about alcohol, right? Alcohol is something quite troublesome. It can lead to a lot of negativity. That's how it seems, right? So I shared a story with you guys previously as well, in one of the previous classes. So I'll tell that again. So in the past, there was a really good monk who was staying in retreat, and nearby there was also a girl living. And this girl, this woman, really liked this monk. She was kind of infatuated with the monk. And so she came to his retreat house once, leading a goat and carrying a bottle of alcohol. And so she gave the monk an ultimatum. She said that you either have to sleep with me, or you drink this bottle of alcohol, or you kill the goat, or I'm just going to kill myself right here. And so what the monk did was he thought that, oh, well, if I sleep with this girl, then I will lose my vows. I won't be a monk anymore. If I kill the goat, then that's also non-virtuous, so I can't do that. So now I'll just drink the alcohol. But then after drinking the alcohol, he became so drunk that he did the other two as well. He slept with the girl and he killed the goat. So then um, just drinking alcohol made him do all the others. Basically, he did all of it, even though he didn't have to. So alcohol is something quite dangerous, something to be careful about.
다 지게 순주 속이 봐 인사로와 대기 영어 가르쳐 주려나 public 노듬 돼서 나론솔라 토바시비 투지 컨디션 걸 가게지게 예르다 가게에서는 각 컨디션 지게 예사리 노나 끈기 노네 초해봐 란조레바 라미 템베스 군들 초힌 제지 총체나 노미 도조요도 조알라스 근데 가르스 예예라와이나 Ndeba chungla chok shiba se jerewa satisfaction ena jilagirwa da enjikela te tsa chibu hiwoji res te yeba ina kondu shebe ki public no dumbo teso kanga yeba chogi res shezon tende indu ndeba chungla chok shiba shiju te nengo res ndeba chungla chok shiba sheba ina te sedo mudo chalo nda munda nomba chibu kase yeba ina yo 여기 짜치고데 네바중라 초히바데리스 소제게 송긴두스 플라도 미키 라마인키 게기인키 소제기 송긴두스 제선 자부초롱 초히바데 조투네 초히바데 조누바이나 아니 조롱라 세도 누라소바 페조라소바 몬보 메바이나요 조롱 추보롱레스 제선 초히바 시로나스 초히바 시토발라 타히노로 나스 든데게 라자트 자송 다데 가졸라 자이르
So now we get to the next verse. And in this verse, Nagarjuna is speaking about the different conditions, the favorable conditions that will allow us to get these 7 kinds of wealth. And so it says, of all great wealth, contentment is supreme, said he who taught and guided gods and men. So always be content. If you know this, yet have no wealth, true riches you'll have found. So it says here that contentment or satisfaction is something really supreme, something very, very valuable. If you have that, if you have contentment, on account of this, then it'll be easy for you to get the other 7 kinds of riches. So this is a really crucial point, actually. If you can decrease your desires and really be content with whatever you have, that's actually superior to having a lot of conventional wealth. This is what the Buddha has taught. So, King Nagarjuna is saying, if you can have contentment, then even if you don't have a whole lot, then you are wealthy. You're really wealthy. That's what Nagarjuna is telling the king, and also indirectly telling us.
테 인도 당아론소 강가 시보도 트레보도 해피니스 데 구긴도 라이에로 테 구기에나 아니 가조 데바촌라 초히바데 란리투 구긴도와 데바촌라 초히바데 나론소게 란리투 토나 아니 가론소 가두이나 토보예바 가두이나 디데바 pesho ke ndon deba, kalo ke ndi deba, dulo ke ndi deba, desa ke ndi deba, gadi ke ndi deba, mobile phone ke ndi deba to kanga ligiro. Ani di jene ani ngazo shibu chogiro. Shezondande nengo hibuji chogindo. Ani nima chiji saje pendita la miki keje tiro ngala debo gugindu sedu chono debo guna deba chuna cho hiwashi guru se lawaro. Shezondande kachewo hibuji chogirta. ngaruzo kangale ngaruzo kanga shibu tobu mebate deba koya mejo cho hiba meya te cho de yera kare ina shezo tande nengo res yer
So, um, all of us want to be happy, right? So then what we need to do is to practice contentment. If we could do that, we would always be happy and satisfied with whatever food we had, with our clothes, with our house, with our housing situation, with our mobile phone, and everything, actually. If we had that kind of contentment, we'll be rich, or we'll feel rich. We'll feel that everything is sufficient, everything we need is there. And in the past, once the Dharma Lord Sakyapandita was asked by someone who said, "Hey, I really want to feel good. I want to be happy. So what should I do?" And Sakyapandita told him, "You should be contentment. You should be content. You should reduce your desires and be content with what you have."
shezo tate indu pena ta ngazo nga se de youtube gindwa nga se de youtube na any satisfaction de le yesarwa nyama chonden de ki kunden la miji lene ani ngala dewa gugindu se ladu ani chonden de ki chono dewa guna ngala ya de pa use ani ngala gugindu la ya de pa use nga se ya de danzi res ngala gugindu se ya de desire res ani chono dewa ungi res la warwa ta chibanda warwa satisfaction de zotuna ani dewa ye pare tate nengo ji choginda te ngazo lonely to ne experience zone ha ko toya ji chode yere.
So actually, we can also note how the I in the sentence is a problem. That's something that we have to get rid of. I want to be happy. So in the past, someone came and talked to the Buddha and said, "Hey, I want to be happy. What should I do?" Then the Buddha said, "I, that's self-grasping. Want, that's desire. If you remove those two, I want, then you just have happiness, right?" But this is something that we have to practice and then um, experience for ourselves.
Shezan jago ki Mahatma Gandhi laya jewa jago ki Mahatma Gandhi laya jewa ronsen lenki ko
Nasa.
laginda deshi laya de choron la kare goa de to ne lejo mari das choron la kare yena tekin digindu sa ne satisfaction zoa yena tela tene ligiri das lagindoa ta keja chibanda burindoa.
So Mahatma Gandhi has also said that contentment is not something that you get after you get whatever you want. That's not when you really feel content. Actually, contentment is something that you have once you think that whatever I have right now, that's all right. I'm okay with that. Then you have contentment. So it's kind of the same point.
Pena nga zo donga mumbo hiwo ji yewa te nga zo la kong giba te so mato ne nga zo donga yeba chao mares nga zo la kong yeba te ki deba magon le ani nga zo donga yeba chao res che zonta nga zo deba kong ya satisfaction shia te ka chebu chao res happiness guna
Actually, we all have a lot of suffering, um, difficulties in our lives, and a lot of times it revolves around really wanting to have something that we're not able to have, or wishing to have a lot of different things that we don't have yet. So then to really overcome this kind of suffering, we have to reduce our desires and be content. Then we'll be free of that suffering.
Shazon de indu shubo do trombo seya ji heiro ngaron zoki. Tanda namba soje bagi shubo seya de sozo le kan ye dewa de hindi denki ki mete la real shubo la yer. Sozo kan ye wa taron mandi ne ngal gugi du gugi sonde na de real trombo res. Ta jabo do ju chebo de zo ngune shena reality la trombo nguma de res. Kozo kase ye na taron ge de yirwa. Ta tende keji tsu he yere.
So we talk about these categories of rich and poor, right? Um, but the Buddhist way of thinking here is that the real wealthy person, the real rich person, is someone who is happy with what they have right now. Um, and the one who wants more and more all the time, who's never satisfied, that's the real poor person. So this is how it is, actually. People who still want more and more, no matter how much they have, they are impoverished, actually.
Ta tsiche nye kyu tanda sunju songa paki. Jono longche kaise mumbo yena tega tse donga moche yeris. Shezan, ani tela sono tongshe ne, nga la mumbo goya mundus. Ngaron son la, kaon yewa de ndi dewa she na yabu hirandu. Se le pe ten jani he yere. Teba domo cheta donga wa. Deba chuna teta malote. Longjo nala ngo jini ba, tele chuen donga tini tos.
So the next verse here is talking about how actually the more wealth you have, the more troubles and the more stress you'll have. So rather than always striving to have more, you should try to just be content with what you have. So this verse, number 35, reads, "Kind sir, to own a lot brings so much misery. There's no such grief for those with few desires. The more the Naga lords possess of heads, the more their headaches, the more they have of cares."
Shezon tate indu tepa sedu jabol seyeri, tepa sedu, tepa ladu mi lele, mi sodo ki chale ina pe misi ndi debo yecho te la jabol laro a jabo ki quality ki kete di hele ludru ki jabol la tepa se le ta ma pe misi yabu tonne lare. Jabol as, donga pe mumbo yeba te, deba chunchu she na donga mumbo ye mares. Deba chebo shibo she na donga mumbo ye res. Pe na lu ki jabo ki ngo la, ngo nga ye jo, ngo den ye jo, son ye jo dende ye res, ngo re la nobu re ye res, ngo den ye na, ngo den ye wa no shi kanga moya ye res, ngo ni ye na, ngo ni ki kanga dere, ki ye na, ki kanga ye res. Te no shi, mombo ye na, jono no shi, mombo guna kanga chea ye res. Dende res le, ta xe se ye rwa. Sheza tanda pe na, zombi li la, Amerika de jo che sho yis, ani pawa che sho la yerwa, ta di kon la kozo de maso ne, ani kasa kala mantu je ne, ani Greenland yon kozo la gu yes, Canada yon kozo la gu yes, 이랑 용 그거 노데 거절라 구이에스 다 근데 쟤네 애니 거절레 강가 희우진도 와다 다 미카게게 나 아리네 일라네 라야라 강가 쳐시바르다 lumba yindal ndona arina eni musli lumba teso kanga gda chando sarwa eni musli teso ke togirwa ta ari passport yinke teso ke nga lumba yindal ne yin segli ni ka chosi bandwa sheza dengo che mombo gugi na eni kanga mombo ndo ta teso ndi tolle yindwa odne resha.
So here, the first word of the verse, kind sir, it's a very respectful term that Nagarjuna is using for the king. It's something like saying, dear king. And this is because Nagarjuna recognizes the good qualities that the king has, and therefore he's addressing him in a very nice and respectful way. Um, Essentially, then he's saying that if you have few desires, you're also going to have few troubles. If you have a lot of desire, if you have a lot of things that you care about and that you grasp tightly to, you'll have a lot of misery, a lot of troubles. And the example given here is that Nagas, the Naga lords, have a kind of jewel on their heads, and a Naga can have many heads. And so if you have one head with one jewel, you have one head's worth of trouble, of concern. And the more heads you have, then the more jewels you have, and the more concern you have for each jewel. So this is how it is. Um, in our world, we know that the United States, America, is the wealthiest and the most powerful country. But they seem to be unable to be content with what they have. And so we see President Trump saying, oh, we want Greenland. Oh, we want Canada. Oh, we want something in Iran, and so forth. And they go all over the world and start wars and conflicts. And it's very possible that in the future it might be troublesome um, for individual citizens if they go abroad and say, hey, I'm from America, because other people from the world are going to feel some sort of resentment towards them. And then, in particular, people from the Muslim world, they might feel a very strong sense of resentment toward Americans. So, actually, this desire brings a lot of troubles to people. It creates a lot of suffering.
Chazan tende imba indupena jetsen mila reba tombo hibo jirowa jetsen mila reba de. Ta kong laban rabol gang je tende dedu eni tsemo kong ki chango nola kuma tende lendwa eni jetsen mila reba glarwa kuma teso la choron so ye nga ye nima ki kong la matobe ki chalo tende choron so ki tsemo nga ki chango ne toya ye mares. Eni mila reba kuma la jun shegi munduwa mila rebale juchalo mera tomborowa shezo ngazol juchalo me deba chebo maje shena ani ngazol dewanduwa ta juchebo deso ki che mombo dabo jegre ani go sungi mombo go gre mesi mombo tsugre cctv mombo tsugre ani deso bill tagre tolo tagre me tombo deso tene kanga ye marwa shezo tene mombo jil sono ton shewa ina deba chibo she, dengo chibo she, satisfaction meba she dewa ina, kanga choya madu, dewa choya de ngune shewa ina, relatila ye marwa, ina da nga zo momba ngo kor she ne, ene nga zo tende nesu chi cho de ye rwa.
So we can also think of the example of Jetsun Milarepa. He was incredibly poor. And once, when he was in his cave meditating, some thieves came during the night to try to steal something. And Milarepa said to them, hey, you won't find anything here during the night because I didn't find anything during the day. And this is true. Milarepa wasn't lying to them. He really owned nothing. And actually, he was the most happy because if we don't have a lot of stuff, we'll be happier. We'll feel more happiness. Because if we consider the case of very wealthy people, they have a lot of things to take care of. So they have to install many security cameras. They have many doors they have to keep guard of. They might have to keep many dogs in their house for increased security and so on. So it's very logical, it's very commonsensical, but yet we don't recognize this fact. We're fooled and sucked in by external appearances.
나서 드니다 지게 니그 단다 순주 소르바도 소덴바게 니케기 고조게 다 저런게 에 총사 제구나 이니 봄에 간데 지찰 총사 제구기에 예비 코디케긴도와 봄에 네게티브 봄에 가게 예리돼서 바이오 그레스 포지티브 봄에 가게 예리돼서도 투나 이니 총사 제구기레 이니 도보 디구레스 드네케제기 달루두게 헤긴도와 롱기 단데 히마타부톤 친단 내지 제모타부톤 중우 고아 청구타부이 주마 숨보테도 넘바 본셀레 다 네게티브 봄에 손예리테 에도 가보조야에 말이 대소 돈 테나 아니 런웨이 조구그리 대소 유그레스 케제데 헤긴도와 제전 동보데 히마타부 생기지 예레스 히마스나 히 현기들라예로와 부철라 말에 다 pena chemeji chongsa jatsane mi shimbaji do tuna ani kozo nindewa zo tadne zo na ani choga saba deki ani choron la choga yere choron ki choga deki huma kanga deki mare wela na gaye mare ngazo ni rune ko sai go na digire sengi ki tende ki chemeji le na ti chemeji dabuji ya ye mares ani yo chemeji kadu ina mo pembo zo denki choga de yobo jojo ki denki tende jire te 유그레스 애니 요체메지 예레스 초가 짠네 계속 조종 렌den기 페나 조트야기 카지에나 용 렌den기 애니 소소그 노멀테 소소그 가살테 초가라 dunni khasa mejo tende jeres kuma noshin res tende ki cheme teso tuna yugure jone kozo do chonsa je mar kozo do gabo zo ye mares tige je de ye so tade luduge jabo deje zombo chogal laja dane ye yero ta luduge jabo deje zombo ge tumo jile laja jiye na cheme jila eni choron choga hima noshin choga kuma noshin choga jabo noshin singi yena en choron la gugi mari da se tende keje de he gurma do yon kozo to longir da
Die nipa dingat is gotsumasa
nipa de hula la gire
alle me mm, tik kimtap niki jemotabo di karere.
jemo lana koron pembo shia koron pembo jojo zo choga de yobo jojo ku dengi tende king
Alle las.
oh
So um, in this next verse, Nagajuna speaks about um, marriage, basically. And he talks to the king and he says that, okay, if you want to get married at some point, then this is the kind of woman that you ought to get married with, and this is the kind of woman you should avoid. So there are two kinds of parts here. So it starts with the negative, and then it comes to the positive qualities, basically. Um, so the verse reads then, a murderess who sides with enemies, a queen who holds her husband in contempt, a thieving wife who steals the smallest thing. It's these three kinds of wife you must avoid. So Nagajuna is telling the king that, hey, if you meet this kind of girl, um, this kind of woman, don't take her as your spouse. You should try to avoid this kind of person, actually. The first kind here is a murderess. And another way of translating this is a butcher. So this refers to a kind of person who, after she gets married, then meets someone new, meets another man, and wants to get with him instead and get married to him instead. And then the new husband will ask, "Oh, well, you already have a husband, so that's going to create troubles for the two of us if we want to be together." And then this woman would say something like, "Ah, that's not a big deal. We'll just gang up and kill my old husband." Um, so that's not a good kind of wife to have. The second is a queen who holds her husband in contempt. This refers to the type of woman who basically wants to be in charge of everything and keep her own husband as a servant, um, doing her own bidding, basically. Uh, and then we have a thieving wife who steals the smallest thing. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Someone who's essentially stealing from you, trying to take advantage of their partner. This is also not a good kind of partner. So the advice here is don't marry this kind of girl. Be very careful about this. And of course, here the advice is towards the king, a husband looking for a wife. But we can also flip it and just as easily apply this to a wife looking for a husband. A husband with these kind of qualities should also be avoided.
Tinita positive ke gaming shares teso sutuna ta chongsa jigu giris ticket de higindoa tike sunju soguba simuta bu jintu koyin tang zamu yindu nila baba tang magi pemban de don temo yin onju koyin riji hlayi kurusene ta pumeki le yires sozo la gabo shinkin sozo ke simu no shinsedu ta sozo ke simu de eki sozo ke penjao de la pechewa zo yabu zo yesarwa ta tanda ki tuze la mogo da ngima ki ludu ki kaso la zo yesarwa shezon tende ki tsowa tenki ji shunga ina te positive re ti chala chorong ta chonsa janan di yirese yesarwa tenin zamu gindu nila baba sedu sozo ki tomo best friend sozo ki senlan donke tende ki tuna eni chonsa janan di yirese 마기 핀반데 소소기 만농신 소소라 제와 땡기지 레나 텐디기레스 손차소아 애니 데모세도 소소라 여보 중케 소소 뱀보 야지 제미 모로 여보 농신 상네인데 가지 흥기지 투나 애니 다 저로 총사 지기레스 근데기 리 넘바 예보데 가요로아지 투수나 총사 제 총조그레스 discuss zogumaris 총사 자가는 되기레스 아니 리지 라긴도 제바 쿠르세도 소소게 라 농신 아니 메도 제바 부 소소 라라 메도 제바 부그라 소소 이당 라라 데노신 다보자시나 엔디기레스레 어떤데 나올라서 달로도 다 시바이나요 부미지기 초가스이에나 딘데지 초가지 토나요 다보자는 리에사라 딘데 고야레죠 오다 델라고 대치긴데게 자 아니가 좀 진짜도 차례 디리
So, so now we'll get to the four kind of good good kind of wives or women that are suitable to marry. Um, and so the verse reads, "A wife who like a sister follows you, affectionate like a true and loving friend, supportive like a mother, obedient like a maid. She must be honored like a family god." So the first of these, following you like a sister, it means that um, typically people are very kind toward their own relatives. I mean, these days we maybe not so much, but back in the day, when Nagarjuna wrote this, people were really careful to treat their family members really well. And so basically someone who treats you really well as if you were her own family, that's a good person to marry. Um, Affectionate like a true and loving friend. So again, self-explanatory. It's someone who is really like your best friend. Um, Supportive like a mother, someone who really cares for you and loves you. And obedient like a maid. Here it means someone who really has the mindset of offering service and seeing the husband as someone really important and as her own, you know, lord, you might say, um, and tries to please their partner, their husband. This is a really good kind of woman to get married to. And so it says she must be honored like a family god. So here, um, you don't have to feel disgusted with this kind of member of the opposite sex, right? This one, it's okay to get married to. That's what Nagarjuna is saying. And this family god, right? Yeah. And this verse number 37, this will be the last for today's class, and we'll wrap up here.
다 ngazo paji sije jado nyegu tsani la jasha dawo ji go na jasha yiju paji tsando gindwa ene huma giza pemba la tuze chiba res ene tewa yena tewa kake lana digi res ene tsango gins
Lasa, nga September la, chishina nga so kecha shene jigu yo sere, kains na nga la lega chik lepso ni yam nga so yana September yana sa nima la chena kanrido.
za nima shena digi re chorong tuze kawa yena digi re ta
Lasa,
za nima yin la ko huma te
lasa. Okay, so if anyone has any questions, we'll have some time for questions now. Campbell also would like to mention that out of 122 verses, we're something like 40% of the way through. And next weekend, we'll meet on Sunday instead, but at the same time as now, right? Um, okay, I see the question. Why did Kempela say that out of the three faiths, inspired faith is the most important? Voilà, så Kempela, ta tiwashik lepsha. Kempela gi song song rwa, tepa sum ki nane, yi chebe tepa di peche zo sung gi yore. Kai chene.
yi chibi tewa si nondu lende la yi chiba si yi ra lende la yi chiba mena tini himba kare yena lega kira zogi marawa
Here, we can also think of trusting faith as trusting karma, cause and effect. And actually, if we don't have a foundational trust in karma, cause and effect, then nothing else will work.
according to the Buddhism teaching rawa
According to Buddhism. Yeah.
Nadriwandwe.
Tanda mindo ngala chewa chi nga tanda disara.
Begire.
Yeah,
Ye
yeah.
getuna hamugo.
De nge inji tona tambo lap. Tadi. So actually, now I have a question for Kempula. I haven't asked any questions so far, so I should also get to ask sometime. Um, in the past, a lot of the masters were monks, right? A lot of the ones who really became enlightened, or they were yogis, so they were not married. But here Nagarjuna is saying that it's okay to get married. So is it possible that we really reach enlightenment in one lifetime if we choose to get married? That also
다다다
lasa.
나가주나 게 인지 메지 총사 조스 라이에 말이다 총사 자나 이나 쪼데 지텔레 라자 지기에로와 지테 바이나 모슬리 총사 지구엔다고 저기에로와 가르스나 민보데서요 빼구기에 자보이나 총사 지구에 니바도 자부기 자제데 숑구이에로와 다 체기 깨져 셰셰와이나 아니 총사 인지 메지 지 구이르 세안다고 마자라 구기서 깨져데 싫어 시리스 조야 문두와 ngazo son je muje se de chungsa janke son je a chi do muja ki karse radu shuma de zo lo son je a chi do ma ba de zo chungsa jingi zo son ma je we ke jan da wo de khira me ro so ko nyolin de ro le jin do wa ta yin na yo chungsa ma je se de chon den de ki chungsa ma ja wa yin na chon responsibility chungi res any chi gi le ga le la tu ze mor to gi res le tapaji giba tso chaya de chungsa ma je se de tel se yi sa ro wa ho so
Also, da kondo kabodo. Um, Kimbala's response to my question is, it's not that Nagarjuna is saying that, oh, you have to get married. That's not why this verse is taught. It's more like, if you do have to get married, then this is the proper way of going about it. And especially for the king, this is an appropriate sort of advice to give because he's a king. He has responsibilities. He has to sort of um, make his dynasty go on. And then for the rest of us, maybe there's some sort of concern about how we have to sustain our population. So some people do need to get married. So, however, from the Dharma point of view, actually, it's not a question of having to get married or having to avoid marriage, but it's more like um, it depends on the individual practice, actually. Those who practice well, they will be able to reach the final result of Buddhahood, no matter their civil status, right? It's not that monks immediately reach enlightenment and Ngakpas, householder practitioners, have a really hard time at it. But then again, it might be the case that if you're married, you have less time. And if you are not married, if you're a renunciant, then you would have a lot more time to practice, whereas married people have less time typically. So maybe that factors in. Oh, la sota tiwa shanda chi
pena
yore.
rowa pena
La
nima gilo so la longchen ranjang ba sengi jimi limba sengi kunchi mepa rumbuchi sengi tezo high realization shivu shivu rowa ina kozo meri ze rowa kozo tawa ma rowa for
la
example
la. Uh, so in the past, then we had these great masters like Longchenpa and Jigme Lingpa and Mipang Rinpoche, who achieved really astounding high levels of realization. But not all of them, the great masters of the past, were um, monks. Some of them
full
were
ordinary ma rowa
they were not fully ordained, right?
laso
Nasa tad tiwa tamachi yore. The okay, I'll read this question. Suppose I don't eat meat, but if I have to cook for my family members, then is it still negative karma that will take me to the lower realms? Ta dedede na
tadini
ngara
ha koson pache
laza.
tade rowa tandande choronge so cheba ina diba yere se hinduwa 다 디바 때도 예사리데 디바 히노 사고 예사 말어와 가르스나 콩게 소제바 말어와 쿠키 집어 제바로와
Laza. So in this case, taking a life, that's the really serious non-virtue. But in this case, if you're not actually personally going out and killing animals, it's not super heavy non-virtue. If you're just cooking, it's really not that bad. But there might be some negativity in there.
이나 용로와 다 하기 리조종 손에 빼고 존나 니바 예사로와 가르세나 소소기 하기 리테 마존와이나 파쇼 힘바데기 세이마로와 그래서 디바이로와
But buying meat actually has some sort of negativity or some sort of non-virtue associated with it because we can think about how if we don't buy it, then that means that the farmer wouldn't have killed that animal, basically. So our consumption has some sort of, yeah,
다
has something to do with
소재
it.
정된데 기로와 ха 사야 데 니바 치보레스레 다 가게 베지테리언 이세 히로 헤기로와 로바도 자이 글룸바데 솔레 나 베지테리언 이라기레데 vegetarian ki sage ki pesho de ka tsong ga ban da bo ji ne shun ne ani di pesho de ki vegetable nyo le sa ne nga vegetarian yi la na hiro ungi sa mare karsana ngune shena vegetarian se de vegetable de so nyo se ki pesho de yo positive ji ngu ye sa re ani positive pesho ki nyone te tsema de sana ani ngune vegetarian ke kalo sangi te chogi yesare te kangandu
Um, Yanala, nga shameins lagi mambodos, tene shapang ne, tene shaki tsabla nga ngutsal nyogiins. Um, Arere.
ngose nyoze ki pesho te
Oh,
negative zone shune ani ngose nyole ani te sana ki shena ngose te do khasawa kipanda wo diba unsi bandus
ale. So, um, the Buddha did say that eating meat is negative and that it's good to be vegetarian. And in China, in particular, there are a lot of people who put a put a great deal of emphasis on being vegetarian. But we have to think about how the money that we use to buy vegetables, if that money is unethically sourced, if we got it in a negative way, then whether we buy meat with that non-virtuously earned money or if we buy vegetables, it would be pretty much the same. So actually, we have to be careful about the money that we earn also has to be earned in a positive way. The money itself has to be positive too.
tabena ngarunzu ki pesho de sosu ki kanga jane meki lega le gadi ki longo le komba concentration ki lega le ta tene dabo shene kanga jedu pesho ki ki vegetable ji nyone sawa ina tene paje yabo chogi saro mado pashan dabo rakan dabo chicken dabo pa song en ti pesho de ki vegetable nyoze she nga vegetable sagi nga vegetarian re nga yabo ilana ta de la thoya meba hinsare
음, 가래청 박샤에
pasha raka shagiri kare ina ji zongle
알레
ti
레스
pesho ge vegetable nyole sana nga vegetarian ilana paji la thoya kale khabo hinsare soje chongi
라서
de gindo chigilo sungin wa
라서. Um, so we can think about how if we work hard for our money, if we do something like house construction or manual labor of some kind, and we earn money, and then we use that money to eat, to buy vegetables that we then eat, then that might be okay, that might be good. But if we are a meat salesman selling pork and all kinds of meat, and then we earn some money, and then we use that money to buy vegetables, then that might not be positive at all, actually. And the Buddha speaks about this in a sutra, actually.
laso
Lasso.
단디 소에
That is all. Yeah.
어디체 나
Okay. So
good
thank you,
night.
everyone. Good night, good day, or good afternoon, wherever
Thank you
you
very
are.
much, Kempola and Olaf. Wonderful, precious teaching again. See you next week on Sunday.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
wish you both a wonderful weekend. Thank you again so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a great
Bye-bye.
weekend.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.